Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to More Than a Game with Fritz and Pitts. I'm one of your hosts, JD Fritz. Also joining me again, as always, Drew Pitzer. Drew, thanks for joining me, man. How you doing today?
Man, it's been terrific, brother. We're already at 9 episodes, almost at our 10th episode. This has
Yeah.
just been absolutely tremendous to do this with you. We've had a great season calling the games with home team. I'm excited to get after it this week because I think the game we're calling is going to be absolutely terrific.
Yeah, I agree. Musselman at Jefferson. It should be a good game. Both teams 3-4. A lot riding on this game as we getting later into the season. Both teams trying to still get in that playoff picture. So yeah, it should be a good one.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like you said, Jefferson's at 9 right now. Musselman's at 11. I think the winner of this game sets himself up in prime position to get a home playoff game. I think if Jefferson wins, it really might propel them up to the top 6 type ranking. And if Musselman wins, it'll get them up to about an 8. But either way, huge stakes on the line for them. But also, we have Spring Mills versus Martinsburg, the championship game from last year. Just a lot of great action this week, JD. But we can go ahead and start with a recap from last week. And we'll go ahead and start with Martinsburg, who hosted Washington. JD, how did you feel about that and why?
Well, I thought actually Washington would do a little bit better. I know Martinsburg's just on a tear right now, but I thought Washington with his, as they've kind of improved just a little bit each game, I thought they'd possibly put a couple scores on the board, especially later in the game. Sometimes when Martinsburg pulls their starters and they're playing their second team guys and even into some of their JV guys, I thought Washington, but Martinsburg stood strong and didn't allow a point and got another shutout on the season. And, Brian Dick had another great game, over 250 yards and 5 TDs this week. So, like, he's kind of slowly creeping. We'll talk about the Kennedy and stuff here in just a little bit, but don't count him out as far as kind of getting his name. There's a lot of names I've wrote down, a few other names that I've seen some guys that are starting to creep up with some really good stats, and so it ought to be interesting. Like, it's really going to come down to these last couple weeks of the season because a lot of guys have really stepped up their game, and Brian Dick from Martinsburg is one of them.
Yeah, for sure. And another guy who's really, creeping his way up into those Kennedy Awards as well is Boston Todd. I mean, he had another phenomenal game. He's really came on over the last 4 weeks of the season after kind of a sluggish start. So I'm really proud to see him and his work ethic starting to pay off. But Martinsburg, like you said, really on a roll, 6 wins in a row after starting out the season 0-2. Real difficult schedule for them too. I mean, they beat Musselman, they beat Morgantown, Jefferson, again Washington. So they got Spring Mills this week. I think they're hitting their stride right at the right time.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, Todd, he had another 3 touchdowns. I mean, that's really good. Like, his touchdown numbers are going really through the roof at this point. And like I said, we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a little bit. But I'll jump to a game that I know we were very interested in as we were calling last week's game, Spring Mills at University. Drew, how did you see that game?
Yeah, again, that was a really competitive atmosphere for Spring Mills and University. But what happened with that is I think Spring Mills fell apart, just how they did against Williams Park. The second half really got to them. Still not really identifying how they can get Xavier Anderson the ball. But at the same time, Spring Mills had so much talent. They just ended up, University overcame them. I think University of Morgantown is going to be a heck of a game the next week when they play. But really, Spring Mills just has not played their best football. I haven't seen it yet. So we'll see what happens as the season moves on. Huge test for them this week. The 4-3 at number 7, WSSAC. It's just it's been hard for them this year to really get going.
Yeah, I agree. And their university's quarterback is really good. Harrison Helbig, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. 360 yards and 4 TDs through the air. I mean, he's really hitting his stride too. Watch out, he hasn't been somebody anybody's talked about, but he's putting up some good numbers over these last few weeks as well. So quarterback is definitely a position that really starting to take off over these last few weeks, because there's a number of quarterbacks on my Kennedy list right now, and you never know. In the next 2 or 3 weeks, a few more might be added to the list as well. But yeah, he had a great game. University played good, but it was a close game, man, and it was a tie. It was tied at 14 at the half. So, well played game by both teams. But somebody had to come out, on top, and unfortunately for Spring Mills, that was University.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And again, like you said, Spring Mills really has a lot of talent on that team. I mean, they have a star-studded running back room, and obviously Schwartz is playing extremely well at the quarterback position. Still, their defense is coming away. They were actually in the lead most of that second half, and University ended up winning on that last possession. So again, credit to University. They're 6-2. They're a top 5 team in the state. Spring Mills still has top 5 level talent, but this week coming up, it's going to be crazy to say Spring Mills might be 500 with only 2 games left to go, JD.
Yeah, you're right about that. I mean, these last couple of weeks is really going to be interesting. You've got Jefferson and Musselman sitting there. Both of those teams could finish 500 or even above 500. So there's a lot of movement going on. I know we got our top 10 rankings as well that we've been doing and everything. Couple different teams kind of switch spots and everything, but not too much, but a little bit. But we'll go ahead and jump to the next game that we were also keeping an eye on. Did we already cover Musselman at Hedgesville? So how do you see that one, Drew?
Yeah, again, Musselman and Hedgesville was just such a terrific, matchup in terms of the rivalry. But we both called that Hedgesville just doesn't have the pieces this year. They just really are struggling. They can't protect Chaz Milburn at all. So with that being said, we both had it predicted over a 40-point victory. But Musselman coming away at 53, I believe 7, or they might not even score. It was just a tremendous output. And Coach Thomas spoke to me back in the beginning of September. He said, when we get to the middle of October and in November, nobody's going to want to play us in the playoffs. And that's really coming along. That game against Jefferson this week's going to be huge, JD.
Yeah, and it was 0, Drew. Just to clarify, like they didn't get any points on the board, unfortunately for Hedgesville. And I don't really have a lot to say about that. It just is unfortunate for Hedgesville that they're still trying to find their identity. We've talked about that in the previous podcast. Don't know, I really feel like they have a solid quarterback in Chaz Milburn, and a couple decent receivers to throw to, but just overall from, I guess, the top down, coaches, players, and everything, they just, they just haven't, as a collective group, haven't been able to kind of find their stride and get it together. Hopefully they start to improve, and maybe they can try to pick up a win. I don't know, but at least, if not this year, they've got to, try to continue this rebuilding and figure out, how to start putting some wins together.
Yeah, again, you have I'd say a top 10 quarterback in the state in Chaz. And you have some decent pieces in the skill position, but they haven't been able to stop anybody. Their secondary has been consistently torched. The run defense has actually been okay. They were stopping the run against Jefferson when we were calling, but Jackson Rockwell was just throwing the ball all over the field. If you can't stop anybody in the passing game and you're not scoring points, it's just a recipe for disaster. But I digress, and we'll move forward again to the game that we covered, though, last week, which was Jefferson versus Loudoun County. And we both were wrong on that one. I said they would lose by 1. They ended up winning by 1 in double overtime. JD, how did you feel about that game?
Man, there's a lot of emotions in that game for sure. I really thought Jefferson was going to be outmatched by Loudoun County, especially not having Tony Allen, playing that night. And boy, but Jefferson stepped up between Rockwell, Trayvon Ledbetter running the ball. You saw Takeem Drake have a long touchdown. I think he actually had 2 touchdowns in that game. I mean, it just was a really good game defensively. They kept Montez Dyson on the wraps. He's probably the best running back they faced all year. Yeah, he probably still had close, if not 200 yards, close to 200 yards. What's that?
He had 198
really, 198. So, but it seemed like a quiet 198. He only really had that one long run there in the beginning of the third quarter, the start the second half. But he gets 30 plus carries. So that's how he's able to kind of, his yards tend to go up, even though he does average, almost 8 yards a carry. I think Jefferson, for the most part, did a pretty good job against him on Friday, and they really don't have much of a threat to pass. So they, as we were watching the broadcast, we kind of were talking about how they seem like they tend to be one-dimensional, and I think that really helped Jefferson out a lot, and they probably adjusted to that, and and like I said, if they had Tony, I think Jefferson wins by 2 touchdowns in regulation. But without Tony, that's a big loss, and they still hung in there. Jackson Rockwell picked up the slack where they didn't have Tony, made a lot of great plays where you thought he was bottled up, going to get sacked. Somehow he gets out of there, completes a pass, throws that touchdown to Ricardo Lewis, in double overtime. And it was just crazy. It just, the emotions were high. The atmosphere was really good. The best game we've called probably since we've been doing it in the last 2 seasons. And probably the best that I've seen the fan base and the student section. Everybody was just, super excited, and it was just a fun game to be a part of.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, when you look at Jefferson starting out the season 0-4 and just basically stagnant, they scored 1 offensive touchdown in the first 4 weeks of the season. Now, over the last 4 weeks, they've been averaging over 35 points a night. So I think that switch to Jackson Rockwell and using his athletic ability to create plays because, like you said in the back, he's doing a lot of backyard stuff. He's basically making a defender play too, and whenever he wants to commit to Jackson, puts also right over the top. If he stays with his man as a receiver, he's going to take it up the field. So his dynamicy and being able to run the football and actually deliver prime time down is incredible. He has 14 touchdowns over the last 3 weeks to be back to Evansville. So really impressive performance, but another huge test for them this week against Musselman. And we'll go ahead and move forward to that game. Jefferson versus Musselman at Jefferson High School. Both teams 3-4. Huge opportunity for playoff implications. JD, who you got and why?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and assume that Tony Allen is playing this week. I haven't talked to his dad about it, but I think he was trying to warm up last week. So with him suited up last week, warming up a little bit, but they decided not to play him. I think this week, I think he's probably at least 80% a go, if not higher for this week. I don't see him. The only reason I see him not playing is if he somehow had a setback in practice. But I would think that they would have probably held him out in practice a little bit. Probably just got a lot of treatment this week, trying to get that ankle back as close to 100% as he can be. Like I said, I think he might only be like 80%. Possibly this week, 75, 80%, but I think that's going to be good enough for Tony to play, tape it up, wrap it up. And I think with the even 75% healthy Tony Allen is going to be better than most players in the state. So I think with Tony making plays, Jefferson, I give them the nod on this one, although, with the way, Musselman's playing. I mean, they played Martinsburg tough for 3.5 quarters. And they're on a 2-game winning streak too, just like Jefferson's on a 3-game winning streak. They've started throwing the ball around a little bit, kind of adding another dimension to their offense. So Jefferson's going to have to keep an eye out on that. But I say with Tony playing and Jefferson being home again, I think it's homecoming this week. So again, emotions, atmosphere is going to be high. I got Jefferson winning 28-20, Drew.
Oh, man, that's going to be a heck of a game. And like I said, I've been going back and forth all week because I think when you look at this matchup, Musselman does a lot that Jefferson does well at, especially running the ball. Jefferson's been convinced stopping the run all season. You saw they bottled up that running back last week for 3 quarters, and then he started getting off a little bit because they wore down. But Musselman's going to stick to that run about 80% of the time. But they have add some wrinkles into the passing game, especially on Ammontrout. You got Colby Sheldon back there, Nate Lazier. So I think with their skill guys, I think it's going to allow Musselman to stay into the game. But I have an upset this week. I have Musselman coming in there and winning 28-21, very similar. I just think Musselman and their run game is going to wear down Jefferson. And I know Tony Allen's going to be playing, and he's at least going to be a great decoy, but I think Musselman will have just a little bit too much, and they're playing really well. Extremely cohesive. Coach Thomas is going to have a great game plan. It's going to be a great game, but I have Musselman winning 28-21. And we'll go ahead and do. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna add real quick. That doesn't surprise me. You're a Musselman grad. I'm a Jefferson grad. So we're gonna be out on opposite sides of the fence with this one this week, but that's okay. It should be a fun game for us to call either way.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll go ahead. I'll put a bet for 15 push-ups that Musselman wins. So if Musselman wins, you owe me 15. Jefferson wins, I'll give you 15.
I'll give you 30.
Okay, well, I ain't giving you 30. I'm 240, so that's a little hard to get up 30 times.
All right, yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
For sure. We'll go ahead and move over to basically the state championship game from last year. Spring Mills versus Martinsburg. This is at Martinsburg. Obviously, Martinsburg's probably a 2-school favorite. What do you feel about this game and why?
Well, Martinsburg again. We've been saying it the last couple of weeks. They've just really started to hit their stride. Every game they seem like they've improved in some aspect of the game, whether it be offense, defense, special teams. Like I said, Boston Tobbs, doing just about everything for them. Brian Dick at quarterbacks, throwing the heck out of the ball. Their defense has stepped up and playing really well. Spring Mills has just been kind of up and down, up and down. We don't know what team, like their identity, they kind of like a lot like, Hedgesville, but in a different way. Sometimes you don't know what team's going to show up, in terms of Spring Mills. We know they're a really good, solid football team, but we've also seen them have some games that kind of, made us sit back and think, well, what is this team going to be this year? You don't know. They've had their struggles on offense, but then they've also put up really good numbers on offense. Defensively, I think maybe where they've had some of their problems is on defense. Although Buddy Hessen, we know he always usually has his defense prepared, but for whatever reason they just haven't been able to make some of those plays later in the game when they've needed to. Just like last week against University, came down to the wire. But with that being said, I think Martinsburg's just going to be a little bit too much for Spring Mills. And I've got Martinsburg winning. I was going to say a little bit higher of a score like we were talking earlier, but I'll go down a little bit. But I still think Martinsburg comes out with the win, 42-21 over Spring Mills.
And that's kind of along the lines of where I think, because again, that Spring Mills defense has had times where they look absolutely phenomenal. I think 90% of the time their defensive unit shuts down people. But they've been getting gashed for big breakdown plays. And a lot of times it's miscommunication in the secondary, and that's where I really noticed Maddox Twig really made them play. And even he got hurt, Isaiah Thompson with concussion for 20, 25-yard rushes, but then they'll have times where they'll get 5 or 6 yards tackled for losses or sacks. A lot of it's just the inconsistency from that football team, and I think they really missed the impact of having a leader like Max Anderson and somebody to steady them. So with that being said, unfortunately, I think it will be a good game in the first half. Martinsburg has been struggling to get out to fast starts, but I still have them losing 37-21. But again, it'll be a good game probably until about the fourth quarter, and Martinsburg will pull away.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. Yeah, like you said, Martinsburg gets off to a lot of slow starts, and a lot of teams, keep it close for the first half or even sometimes almost 3 quarters. But yeah, Martinsburg seems to always make good halftime adjustments and pull away at the end.
Yeah, for sure. We'll go ahead and move over to Hedgesville is traveling up to Parkview High School out of Virginia. Parkview is 3-4 on the season. They're not really that talented. This is actually a really good matchup for Hedgesville.
It is.
Andy, who do you feel has a chance to win this game and why?
Listen, I would love to see Hedgesville finally get a win, and I think out of every team or every game on their schedule, this is the one game that I think that is a potential win for them. Parkview doesn't have a strong schedule either, and like you said, they're 3-4, so they've struggled. Against a lot of some of those teams in Loudoun County. They're up in that area as well. But because of their strength of schedule, versus Hedgesville's. I mean, not that Hedgesville hasn't had a strong strength of schedule. I think Parkview's got a few more key wins, and Hedgesville hasn't been able to find the win column yet. I still think Parkview is about 1 touchdown better than Hedgesville in this game. So I got Parkview 26-20 over the Ville.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't have it that close. Hedges will be without a couple key linemen. Chaz is really beat up too. I just think offensively they can't get any cohesiveness moving forward, and defensively, again, their secondary has been terrible really all season. To put it not so lightly. With that being said, I think Parkview is going to end up winning by about 2 or 3 touchdowns. I have them winning 28-7.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. I mean, I figured if Hedgesville was going to have a chance, they would have to put at least 2 or 3 touchdowns up, But you never know. I'm pulling for them though, because I think it would be a big, morale boost for their team, and they just need it because they're on a losing streak dating back to last season. So I think this win would be, huge for them. It's more or less their championship game, like kind of so to speak. I mean, you look at their schedule; they've got Dominion next week, who's not. It doesn't get any easier. They're usually a pretty solid team across the board, and then Spring Mills to finish out their season. So doesn't get easier for Hedgesville. So like I said, this hopefully is a must-win game for them to try to at least get one under their belt.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think this is probably their last chance to win a game, and I think they're going to come out to beat. Coach Fairclough definitely always has that kind of hard-headed, grit mentality. But like I said, I still think they just don't have the skill to be able to do it. 19 games losing streak dating back to week 2 of last season. So we'll see what happens. But we'll move forward to the last game of the week, and that's Washington traveling up to Hampshire to play them. And I think that's going to be a terrific game because both sides are fighting to get into the playoffs. Hampshire AAA, Washington Quad A. But I think Hampshire's actually a little bit more talented. JD, who you got why?
Yeah, Hampshire's really, really good. They're 5-3. Washington, we've seen them kind of win one, lose one, kind of every other week. But I think this week, Drew, just to keep it short and sweet, I think Hampshire's just for the first time in a while, Hampshire's got some athletes on their team, and they've looked really good. I mean, I'm really surprised they have really stepped it up, and every week, Hampshire seems to be improving. And I think this week finally is going to be, I think, the first week that we see Washington lose back-to-back games. And so I've got Hampshire winning 34-21, Drew. And Hampshire's playing at home too, so I kind of give them the edge with that as well.
Yeah, and Hampshire has a really stout defense, too. They have 2 shutouts on the season, a couple games where they've only given up about 14. So they play really well together, stop the run extremely well. So I think it's going to be a little bit lower scoring game, just depending on Renner's health, how well that Phil Seals comes out and runs the football, and also Alex Mack. But I have Washington going there and pulling off an upset, 14-13. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game, real defensive battle. But again, Washington goes to Hampshire, beats them 14-13, and really secures their spot into the playoffs.
Okay, good. I'd love to see Washington come out on top on that one and keep the every other game trend that they've had and keep their playoff hopes alive. Because I think this is a big deal. If they drop 3-5, they start to slowly drop out of that playoff picture more and more. And with the win, pull them a little bit closer to 500. I was going to grab their schedule real quick to see what they have the rest of the week or year. So, but yeah, this is a key win. If they can get this Hampshire win, because then they've got Musselman and then at Jefferson. So 2 tough teams to close their season out. So I think this is going to be a huge win, because even if they lost the last 2 games of the season, I still think they could be just on the outside of the playoff picture, depending on who wins and who loses the last couple of weeks. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, because I do think a 4-6 team can get in this year. So if that's Washington, then we'll have to wait and see. But they've got to win this game this week against Hampshire, because I don't know. I'm not saying they can't beat Musselman or Jefferson, but the odds are definitely more stacked against them in those two games versus Hampshire. So I think this is definitely a must win for them if they want to keep their name in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, Hampshire being their 3A, if they lose to a 3A school like that, and they're at 13 right now, I'd say they dropped about 17. And if they don't split, at least with Washington or with Jefferson and Musselman, I think they'll be just find themselves right on the outside getting in. So, but with that being said, JD, that was our analysis and projection. We'll move forward to our top 5 in the Kennedy Awards. And who are your top 5 going into week 9 of the EPAC WSSAC football season?
Well, I've added a couple names to the list, but they're at the bottom. But they'll be worth a mention a little bit out past the top 5. But obviously, Brad Mosser is moved up, and I think both of our top spots now. He has over 800 yards receiving, 8 receiving touchdowns, 235 yards rushing with 15 touchdowns rushing on the ground. So that's pretty impressive. Total of 25 touchdowns on the season. He's got a couple pick sixes as well. So that guy does everything for Princeton. Offense, defense, special teams. So right now he's at the top. Maddox Twig still holding the second spot. He had a really great game last week, had 4 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing. He's got over 1,200 yards passing on the season, 13 TDs in the air, 7 on the ground. So he's in my second spot. And now a guy that I know you like and talked about, Boston Todd, has now moved up into my third spot. over 600 yards receiving, over 260 yards rushing, 15 total touchdowns. He's got 1,200 total yards between offense and special teams. And so yeah, I mean, he's really starting to kind of move up, at a rapid pace there. Brendan Wack, I'm still holding Brendan Wack at my 4 spot. He came back last week. Didn't score a touchdown. I don't think they gave him a ton of carries because he's been out a couple weeks. They're probably trying to get him just kind of back into the flow of everything. He did have a little over 100 yards rushing in the game. So he's still kind of holding at my 4th spot. And then I got Max Simpson. The guy that you were talking about. I didn't get his stats. I was trying to find what his stats were last week. We do know he's the top quarterback in terms of yards, passing yards and TDs. We know he's got over 2,000 yards passing and a little over 20 touchdowns. So those are my top 5. A couple honorable mentions I'll throw in there real quick. Chance Barker of Princeton, the guy that throws, the ball to Brad Malser. He's got little over 1,800 yards and 15 touchdowns. And Brock Green from Independence. He's another one that's right there with Barker. He's at 1,750 and he has 17 touchdowns. So we'll see where those guys fall in the mix also over the next couple weeks. But it's definitely going to be interesting. I think there's going to be a lot of shuffling around. The top 3, I think, are going to stay probably pretty solid even over the next couple weeks because I see them still improving on what they do each week. But Drew, I'll turn it back over to you. And what are your top 5?
Yeah, I think Brad Malser is running away with the award now. Like you said, 25 total touchdowns. He's doing it everywhere. I think he has 3 pick sixes. So, I mean, an incredible football player, one of the best players in the state. I've heard a couple of people compare him to Ryan Switzer. I think we can slow down a little bit on that. Definitely a tremendous player and athlete. He's my player number 1. My number 2 is actually Boston Todd, though. I think he's the best athlete in the state. I think with everything he's doing for Martinsburg, I think he's going to be able to creep himself up into possibly winning that award. But we'll see what happens depending on how Martinsburg finishes the season and get into the playoffs. Then I have Maddox Twig at my number 3, just playing absolutely tremendous. He's still a little beat up, but starting to get a little healthier. Like we said, 6 total touchdowns last week, 4 through the air, 2 on the ground. Then at that 4th spot, I have Max Simpson as well. He leads the state in total passing yards. I believe he had 257 last week, so about 2,200 yards total. And then at my 5 spot, that's where I was really up in the air because I think Brendan Wack still deserves to be in the top 5. Again, he's depending on his health and him missing a couple of games. That's why he dropped off because I think starting out the season he was on a blitz pace. I mean, he was running away with the award. Unfortunately, injuries happened, but definitely that is my top 5. I think those guys are going to be in the top 5 relatively the rest of the season. But we'll see how the rest of the season goes, JD.
Yeah, and I agree. I just threw in those other guys because they have good numbers, and I just noticed that somebody posted something about them because actually Princeton and Independence play each other. So they're number 1 in 3A versus number 2 or number 1 in 2A. So those 2 quarterbacks are going to go head to head tomorrow Friday night. So we're going to see, just what they're all about. So kind of keep an eye on that game too. See how those guys do. Obviously, Malser, is going to be playing in that game as well. So, just kind of wanted to point that out. But yeah, I mean, you're right. Our top 3 are the same, a little bit different order, but I think the top 5 is probably set too, unless something drastic happens over the next couple of weeks. And I'm not sure, Drew, maybe do they just count only, the 10 regular season games when it comes to these awards, or does that carry over into the playoffs?
So it carries over a little bit into the playoffs. So usually the awards get voted on in about the quarterfinals. So I think you usually get about 11 to 12 games of work. So they don't have a consistent criteria for the Kennedy Award, but at the same sense, I think that top 5 is just clearly the 5 best players in the state right now. Of course, they got a couple honorable mentions that are creeping their way back up into those rankings. But we'll see, man. So with that being said, though, let's go ahead and move to the last part of our pod and our top 10. JD, who's your top 10? And go ahead and name from 1 to 10.
All right, not a little bit of movement, not a ton of movement in my top 10. Obviously, number 1 is Huntington. They improved to 6-1. I got number 2, Martinsburg, number 3, Morgantown. So the top, and number 4, University. So my top 4 didn't change. I know you had Spring Mills at 4, University at 5, but that's my top 4. And I got Willing Park at 5. They moved up. I moved them up one spot with the win they had this week. They improved to 5-3. And so I dropped Spring Mills down 1 with the loss to University. So they're in my 6th spot. Jefferson up 2 spots now to number 7. Even though they're only 3 and 4, we know Jefferson is a little bit better, or even a lot more improved than their 3 and 4 record indicates. They could have easily, you go back and you play Spring Mills and Sharando, and they might win those games right now. So it seems like they always get off to a slow start the first 3 or 4 games until they start kind of getting things together. And unfortunately Tony got hurt, but luckily Tony got hurt and they were still able to beat GW and hang on in the second half, and then also beat Loudoun County last week. But George Washington's dropped 1 spot to number 8. Musselman's moved up 1 to 9 in mine, and then I got Parkersburg now at number 10. They moved up a spot. So that's my top 10, Drew. Couple changes, nothing too drastic, but I'll turn it over to you. What do you got for your top 10?
Yeah, again, it's relatively the same. Obviously, I have University and Spring Mills split now. But at 1, I have Huntington, 2, Martinsburg, 3, Morgantown, 4, University, 5. That's where I kind of got a little confused right there. I'm going to put GW there because I think they played really well against Huntington. Then I have Spring Mills at 6, Jefferson at 7. Actually, when it gets to this point right here is where I think it's in a different tier. I think it's tier 3. I have Musselman at 8, and then at 9, it gets a little complicated because I think Parkersburg deserves that spot too. But I don't know with their record if they really are going to get there. But I'm going to put them at 9, and then at 10, I'm going to be a little changed up. I'm going to give it to Washington. Cameron Togan gave me a little heck. He said they're a top 10 team in the state. I'll give it to him. I have Washington number 10, so we have 4 of the Eastern Panhandle in the top 10 of the state, JD.
Where did you, so I didn't hear you mention it, but maybe I just overlooked it. Where did you have Willing Park?
Did I not say 5? I thought they were at 5 and then Spring Mills at 6. I think I glossed over at Willing Park. I have Willing Park at 5 and then Spring Mills the rest of the list because the Washington's getting bumped.
Yeah, I was going to say, and the only reason I had, I moved up Willing Park a spot over Spring Mills, because I think I had them flip-flop last week. I still had University at 4, but then I had Spring Mills at 5, then Willing. The only reason I switched it is since Spring Mills lost this week, Willing Park still won, but they also, I gave them the points over Spring Mills because of the win earlier in the season over Spring Mills. So that's kind of why I had Willing Park at 5 and Spring Mills at 6, but it's fun to do this, man. It's fun to do it.
Head-to-head, Willing Park and University both got them, and Morgantown. So those are 3 teams that definitely have to be above them. If Martinsburg gets them this week, there's no way that they can be a top 5 team, at least in my opinion. So huge opportunity for them this week.
Yeah, and you look at these games, like Huntington plays an out-of-state team again. Sevier out of Tennessee, Sevier County, they're 7-1. So it's possible Huntington takes their second loss of the season. We don't know how good that team is in Tennessee, so we'll just have to wait and see. Obviously, Martinsburg plays Spring Mills. Morgantown's at University, so that'll be another one to keep an eye on. That game could almost really go either way. So could be some movement. And then Willing Park playing out of state over in Ohio and at Steubenville. They're always a solid program. They're 6-2,
I believe. Yep,
what's that? 6-2.
Yeah, you're right.
And so yeah, those top 4 teams, they've all got tough games ahead of them, and a couple of them could take some losses this week, and maybe we've got some movement in that even in that top 5 come next week. We'll just have to wait and see, but it's going to be a good week 9 of football here in the Eastern Panhandle and in the state altogether.
Yeah, the whole state is going to be great football. Like you said, we're getting really close to the playoff time. Only a couple more games left until the games really do matter, JD. But that's pretty much all I got for today. I'm ready to call that Jefferson Muslim game with you on Friday. And
Yeah.
Muslim guy, Jefferson guy, got bragging right, push ups on the line. I can't wait, brother.
Yeah, me either, man. It's going to be fun, man. I don't know if it can outdo last week's game we did, but we'll see. You never know. It could go down to the wire, maybe an overtime game, but it's definitely going to be another exciting game, and I just love doing this.
Yeah, and me too, brother, man. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, really appreciate you guys tuning in to More Than a Game with Fritz and Fitz, episode 9. Make sure you love, like, subscribe, share all of our stuff. We really appreciate all the support. Again, we'll be live at Jefferson High School on Friday. Coverage will start about 6:40 between Muslim and Jefferson. You won't want to miss a key game for both sides. And again, I'm Drew Pitzer, mother host JD Fritz. This is More Than a Game with Fritz and Fitz, and we're out. Love you guys. See you next week.
See ya. That is awesome.